For each question, 1 to 5. You have to decide which alternative is the most suitable answer and circle the appropriate letter. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, 992846.
Dad, is that you?
Hannah?
Dad, I'm phoning...
The line isn't very clear.
Yes, I know. I'm on a mobile and the signal isn't very good. I'll see if I can move. Is that any better?
Yes, that's much better. Just don't move.
I'll try not to.
Have you found a place to live yet?
Yes, I think I have at last.
Wonderful.
I'm relieved because I'm fed up looking. I didn't think it was going to take me 3 weeks.
It hasn't been easy for you. I suppose it's the beginning of the academic year, and you have all the new students looking for places as well.
Yes, that's one reason. But this place is also full of new technology companies, and there are lots of young people looking for somewhere to live. And you know what that means.
Higher rents as well.
Yes, much higher.
Well, tell me, how much is it?
It isn't cheap for this area. It's £400 a month.
That's much more than you had expected.
Yes, it is. But I can't face looking anymore. I want a place where I can put my things instead of living out of a suitcase. I don't want to stay in this hotel any longer.
I guess not. So, what's the new place like?
Oh, it's really, really nice.
Oh, good.
It's in a very quiet street. It's a 2nd-floor flat with 1 double bedroom, a large living room, kitchen and toilet and bathroom.
Sounds very nice.
Oh, it is. And guess what?
Yes?
It's got a small roof terrace looking onto the garden at the back.
Great.
And it's big enough to have my plants and a small table and chairs.
Brilliant.
Before the speakers continue their conversation, look at questions 6 to 10. As you listen to the second part of the conversation, complete the numbered spaces 6 to 10.
Now, what's the address?
It's 22B White Hart Road.
22E.
No, 22B. B for banana.
Right. And it's White Hart Road?
Yes?
And the postcode?
Oh, I don't think I've got it.
OK.
No, here it is. It's EX15 9RJ.
This line is bad. Is that EX50?
No, it's EX15.
OK. I don't think I know the road.
It's a side road, but you do know the area because it's off Garrett Lane.
Oh, right. Which end?
The other end from the stadium.
So, it won't be too noisy then?
You can still hear it from here when there's a match on.
When are we going to see you?
Well, I was going to come down on Friday evening after work, and then we could bring my things by van on Saturday afternoon. I want to move all of my stuff out, to give you and Mum more space.
We'll need to hire a van then.
It's okay. I'll pay for it.
No, don't worry. It'll be a gift from your mum and me.
Oh, Dad, it's okay.
No, I won't hear of it. We'll pay.
All right. Thanks, Dad.
And if you're taking everything, we might need to hire a container lorry.
Oh, Dad!
I'm only joking.
I know.
I'll hire the van for the Saturday then. I can pick it up first thing in the morning.
Right.
And then return it in the evening.
Are you sure you don't want to stay overnight?
No, I'd best get back the same day. You know what your mum's like. She'll only worry. If I remember rightly, it's about 3 hours by road?
Yes, roughly.
Well, if we leave by lunchtime, we'll be there mid-afternoon.
Okay.
Then a couple of hours to unpack.
Then?
We could go to a nice restaurant round the corner.
Definitely. My treat.
You're on. But I'll have to be away by about 7:30-ish.
Okay.
Right then. Mum wants to have a word. I'll see you Friday.
Bye, Dad.
I'll hand you over to her. Bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a woman talking about health and safety when using a computer.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the second session on health and safety. And today we're focusing on health and safety when using a computer. Now, can you all gather round this workstation here? That's great, thanks. Okay now, let's look at some equipment that is specifically designed for safe computer use. Firstly, take a look at this item here. Yes, the sloped slab in front of the keyboard. Does anyone know what it is? That's right, it's a wrist rest. And it does a lot more than take up room on your desk, I can tell you. Well, what does it do exactly? In actual fact, it's specifically designed to support your wrist when you're typing or when you're using a computer mouse. Now, the one I'm holding in my hand is made of foam rubber. Come on now, have a feel. You know you want to. Now, it's very flexible, isn't it? The padding is firm, but it also gives way when you press it, just like this. Here's another type, by the way. This one is filled with gel. Now, like the foam rubber type, it's got a firm surface, but when you press it like this, it gives way with a little spring. However, not all wrist rests are flexible like that. Some are made from hard plastic. That doesn't sound like a comfortable support for your wrist, does it? So, not to be recommended. OK, So we know what kind of material we're looking for in a wrist rest. But what else do we have to think about before we choose one? Now, look again at the foam rubber wrist rest here. You can see that the slope of the wrist rest and the height and the width too match the front edge of the keyboard here. And there are no sharp edges. Look, it's really nice and smooth. Now, we know it's a busy time for you all at the moment. You're busy with assignments in between the hours you're spending browsing the net and going on social networking sites. Well, just think about how hard your wrist has to work. So, using a wrist rest like this one can really help in a number of ways. First of all, it helps you keep your wrist straight when you're using your computer. I'm demonstrating this now. As you can see, my wrist is neutral and straight rather than bent up and down. See what I mean? Now, it can also provide padding for your hands. It works in much the same way as a cushion, so it makes your desk much more comfortable. Now, please note, I did say cushion rather than pillow. We don't want you students to be too comfortable. Another advantage of a wrist rest is that it stops your hands from dropping off the edge of the keyboard. A wrist rest can also relieve tension and soreness in your neck and shoulders. And how does it do that exactly? Well, it removes the weight of your arm from your shoulders and neck altogether. So there are a lot of benefits, aren't there? However, most people never learn how to use a wrist rest correctly. In fact, leaning your wrists on a wrist rest for long periods can put a lot of pressure on the undersides of your wrists, just here. Now you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 18 to 20. So, to make the most of your wrist rest, it's really important to follow a few basic tips. First of all, make sure you place your wrist rest approximately 1.5 inches away from your keyboard, like this. And never ever place your wrists directly on your wrist rest. Instead, place the palm or ball of your hand on the rest. And another thing, don't use the wrist rest all the time, particularly when you're typing. Instead, your hands should be on the wrist rests during break periods, so between your typing sessions. This will avoid you putting strain on your wrists and fingers. Now, does anyone have any questions before we move on to computer glasses?
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3. You will hear a museum director talking to several student interns, explaining their internship duties at the museum. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. As you listen to the first part of the conversation, answer questions 21 to 25.
Welcome to the City Museum of Art. I'm Dr. Shirley Johnson, the director of the museum's internship program. Today, I'll be giving you an orientation to the museum and our museum administrator's internship program.
Will we get a chance to tour the museum today?
Yes, we'll start right now with a tour of the building. We'll skip the basement. Most of that part of the building is devoted to art conservation, which won't be part of your internship. Let's begin here on the ground floor with the museum offices.
I guess this is where we'll be spending most of our time, helping with the office work.
You'll spend some time working in here so you can learn what the administrative duties involve. But you'll also get a chance to experience all aspects of museum work. This room in here is the museum tours office.
I'm interested in that. I'd really like to help out with the tours.
That's great, because you'll all have a chance to lead some tours and maybe even to develop a tour of your own, too. Let's go up to the second floor now.
This is the boardroom in here, isn't it? Will we get to go to board meetings?
Only members of the board of directors attend those. Now, back here behind the galleries are the classrooms. You're all welcome to attend any class you want at no charge.
But we won't be teaching any, will we?
No, the staff of the education department is responsible for that. Let's move up to the third floor now and the research department. Each of you will spend some time working in here.
Great. I'd like to help with the research.
We're working on some very interesting research projects right now. Also, as an extension of your research work, you'll probably contribute to some of the museum's brochures.
I'm looking forward to that. I like writing about art. Another thing I've been hoping to be able to do is meet some artists.
You're in luck then. We've planned a reception for the first day of your internship, and you'll have the chance to meet several local artists then.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Could you give us a little background of the museum? I mean, when it was built and some information about the collections and things like that?
Of course. The main part of the museum was built in 1895 with a combination of public and private funds. The new wing was built 60 years later with a donation from the Rhinebeck family.
That part of the museum was built for the modern art collection, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. In the main part of the museum, we have a gallery devoted to works by local artists, our sculpture collection, and a small collection of classical European art.
You mentioned classes earlier. What kinds of classes does the museum offer?
In our adult education program, we offer a series of art history classes. And for children, we have a program of arts and crafts workshops. You can get a brochure from the office that will give you more information.
I saw a lot of chairs set up in the main hall. What are those for?
Those are there for tonight's musical performance. We offer a weekly concert series during the fall and winter, and of course, all of you are welcome to attend. Now, if there are no more questions, let's step into my office and I'll show you your schedules.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear part of a lecture about animals. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
In today's lecture, I'm going to talk about avoiding predation. What does that mean, I hear you say? Well, you probably know the word predator. I'm sure you've all seen Predator the movie. Well, a predator is any animal that hunts and kills another animal. That animal, and I was going to say that smaller animal, but it's not always the case, is the prey. An owl, for example, is a predator, and a mouse is its prey. A lion is a predator, and a much bigger animal, a buffalo, for example, is its prey. So when I say avoiding predation, what I mean is not being caught and eaten. For many small animals, not being caught and eaten is pretty much a full-time job. Many animals that are predators themselves may be the prey of another, usually bigger animal. This is what we popularly call the food chain. So, how do animals avoid predation? Well, they have what we call defense mechanisms. These are ways in which the species has adapted over time to give it an advantage over its predators. Any adaptation of this kind increases the species' chances of survival. Over time, species that have not adapted, that is, developed some sort of defense mechanism, have met with extinction. There are various forms of defense. The first is probably very obvious, and that's speed. Predators can't feed on what they can't catch. Running away is a very effective defense mechanism, as some of you can probably remember from primary school. Flight is even more effective. Species which have developed the ability to fly over time have an enormous advantage. Far more birds would be a meal out in the wild if they couldn't fly. The second mechanism is protective coloration. You might hear the word camouflage used too, but I personally find that too simple a term when it comes to the animal kingdom. Protective coloration includes a number of slightly varied mechanisms within the overall term. Some animals blend in with their background. A chameleon is a good example. It sits on a tree and it looks like the branch of that tree. Butterflies have what we think of as beautiful patterns, not to be beautiful, but to confuse and warn off potential assailants. They blend in with the flowers around them, but may also look like something else. Some butterflies have patterns that look like huge eyes, and a would-be predator is scared off. There are all sorts of stories about how the zebra got its stripes, and not many people really know what the stripes are there for. Well, that type of coloration is called dazzle camouflage. A zebra stands out when alone and stationary, but when zebras move rapidly in a herd, their stripes create motion dazzle, a confusing, flickering mass to the eye of a lion or cheetah that might be giving chase. Selecting a target becomes far more difficult. Now, of course, animals are caught. They're frequently caught. But that might not mean the game's up. Some animals make themselves difficult or horrible to eat. Hedgehogs have sharp spines that deter a predator from tucking in even when it's captured its prey. The predator is very likely to give up when a spine gouges an eye or gets lodged in its throat. Numerous species of creature, turtles or snails for example, have developed a tough outer shell that makes it almost impossible to devour. One of my favorite creatures is the skunk, which emits a repulsive smell on being cornered, enough to send any attacker herring back into the undergrowth. In a similar way, some sea-dwelling mollusks can emit an ink cloud that fills the surrounding water, concealing it from a predatory fish that may be circling. There are frogs that go one step further. They're so poisonous that even if a predator does try and eat them, it'll probably keel over and drop dead first. Now, you'll probably be surprised, but I'm going to go on to talk about plants. Yes, many plants have defense mechanisms in exactly the same way as animals. You've probably all been stung by a nettle at some time.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.